What up? Uncle Benji here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing on with the oral history of my collection, and we're talking about not just one of my favorite artists in hip-hop, but legitimately one of the best hip-hop artists of all time when you factor in rhymes, beat making, albums, guest appearances, just doing everything. We're talking about Quelle Chris. I think I've mentioned him a little bit on this channel, but definitely haven't done a full video or a deep dive into any of his work. And what better place to start than this album right here, Innocent Country Season 2. You can see I got the shirt on here as well. Quelle Chris has an extensive discography. This album is a really special album that came out in 2020, right as pandemic was really kind of kicking off in April. And it was something that I think a lot of us really needed to hear. You see, as I said, Season 2. He had made a previous album, Innocent Country, which you can see back here. Really great album. I think when you hear those titles, Innocent Country 2, it is kind of in jest, There's a lot on both these albums, especially on this one, though, about the black experience in America and, what that embodies for Quelle Chris growing up in this country, what it embodies for so many people growing up in this country. How you thrive, not just survive, but how you thrive and make sense of the place you have in the world is really something this album does really well. And obviously, I'm not black, but I've been enamored, closely connected with black music since I was very young, and not just black music, but culture. I've just always found the truth in it, and it's resonated with me in a way that not a lot of art does. And that's why still to this day, decades later, I'm so obsessed, not just with hip hop, but any kind of American black culture and art that I could absorb. Puts me closer to the truth that I'm trying to seek out in the world. And this is one of those albums that really cuts through all the bullshit and does it in a beautiful way that's, really nice and amazing to listen to. It's made with, you see on here, Chris Keys, who's a frequent collaborator of Quelle Chris, amazing producer, instrumentalist, keyboard player, arranger. Quelle Chris, like I've said, the top is an incredible producer, but working together, they really create something greater than themselves. And like when you see this album too, like they're the two key players, but when you look at all the different people that worked on this album, that's Quelle Chris. Like that's what he embodies, is community. Much like another of my favorite artists I've talked about on this channel, Pink Sifu. I really see both of them as kindred spirits that do it all, are involved in many different sounds and aspects of hip hop. It doesn't matter what kind of beat it's on. Quelle Chris is going to find a way not just to have a good verse on that beat, to have a verse that completely stands out and a flow that stands out from anyone else who might happen to be on the beat as well. He's going to take his own path. He's going to do it his unique way. And has an incredible aura about him. I'm lucky enough to meet him a couple times. First back at the Aethiopes release show in New York in 2022, Billy Wood's Aethiopes album. I got to meet Quelle Chris there outside the show and take a brief picture and tell him how much he meant to me. And more recently, I got to meet him up in Chicago at one of Rich Jones' showcases where he was doing a DJ set up there and just hang with the people. And I got to talk to him for a long time in between sets. And we're about the same age and had a lot that I could relate to him on about growing up and obsessing about hip hop in the late 90s and early 2000s, and just being able to pick out different things in his lines that, people from our generation really get. But this album is like so cinematic. I mentioned all the different collaborators on there, but like if I look at the back, it has multiple appearances by Cavalier, who's on tons of Quelle Chris albums and collaborative albums together, very close collaborators. I've obviously made a video about Cavalier before and his discography, but him and Quelle Chris, like, I think as long as they're making music, they're going to be making music together. And it's always great when you get those two on the track together. Towards the end here, it has a song with Earl Sweatshirt and Denmark Vesey Mirage It's one of Earl Sweatshirt's best ever verses. And, you know, having that on here towards the end is really special. It's got an incredible appearance by Star Busby, who I'd never known before hearing this album. An amazing singer who really brings something to a track, make it better. Again, like a lot of this album is like very spiritual for me to listen to, and I'm not a religious person, but it's kind of like the closest I get to feeling like I'm back at church. I did go to Catholic school growing up, so I was raised being around churches, you know, but spirituality became something that was very personal and individual to me. And I'm sure a lot, like growing up, seeing the way churches operated, seeing the way the country operated, seeing the way that friends that I had, women that I dated that were black, and their different experiences growing up in this country, stuff like really resonated to me and kind of was a big factor in me getting away from the type of organized religion that I was raised upon. And it became a very individual thing for me. And even though like a lot of this album is rooted in black spiritualism, in my opinion, it's not showy in the way that it's traditional religion, organized religion, going to church, praying to the same God that we've all been raised in America. This touches on more tangential themes around that, where it's not a spiritual album in a Christian way to me. There's definitely mentions on the album that if you are Christian, you're going to relate to and get stuff out of, but it's a lot dealing with embracing who we are. Black is beautiful. You know, the culture, the tradition that we have, embracing that. People that come up in this country and have a lot of that erased. You know, how do we come together? And this album really, really puts me in a headspace that allows me to understand and empathize with people that have struggles that I don't have. And how can I help? How can I support? The biggest way is how can I relate? You know, how can I understand the plight? And this album really does a lot of that for me. It brings me closer to my spiritual self, what I see in the world, the injustice that I see, how I can make it better, as the song on here says. But, you know, obviously this album, when it came out, was something I was really obsessed with. I got a t-shirt. I bought some socks, Innocent Country, 2 socks as well. So I love supporting the art that I love by buying merch. And since this album, Quelle Chris has just continued to put out amazing material. Like I mentioned, him guesting on other people's stuff, and how I think he's probably the best rapper I know that jumping on someone else's track or jumping on a compilation that a producer has and having the best track on there. And it's something that I've told him in person that I know he really appreciated, because that's not easy to do. You know, most people are really focused on their own projects and, you know, how to milk the most out of that. And yeah, they'll work with other people, but it's hard to give your full attention to something when you're on someone else's track instead of your own. And, you know, that's never the case with Quelle Chris. Like, if he is going to have a track on something, it is going to be fully fleshed out. You know, if it's his own individual track, he's going to have his own hook on there. He's going to have different types of flows. If he has an MC on there, he's going to be rhyming differently than that MC. And it's always going to sound good. It just seems like he has a pretty-natural talent for rap. And he's been doing this for such a long time. I mean, I've talked about Rock Marcy on here when he was first coming out of his initial blowing up with, you know, Marsburg and Reloaded. Quelle Chris was a guy that had Rock on an album with him, his first album, you know. So there's a lot of history with Quelle Chris. He's lived all over the country, from Detroit, Chicago, New York. I believe he lives in Baltimore now. So he's always touring. He's always putting on great performances. He's almost like a rap shaman to me, out in the world. And, you know, he's in touch with his spirituality, with being black in America, what it means, how we make the best of it, how we display that image to other people. And man, like, if you haven't listened to this album, this is an album that, you know, while it's a hip hop album, you could play this for anyone. Like, anyone who loves black music, going back to the 70s, stuff like Stevie Wonder. This is going to relate. It's really, really high-level musicianship. Every song on here sounds different, but it all blends together into one vision. And it's not going to sound like any other hip-hop album you've heard. It's not going to sound like anything in Quelle Chris's discography. All of his albums sound different. But I think this album, if you're new to Quelle Chris, or if you haven't fully dove into his discography, this is a great place to start, because you really get an idea of not just who he is as an artist, but who the overarching community that he's involved with and creates, and the connector that he is in hip-hop, connects so many different scenes and sounds together, and is always looking for stuff that's authentic, that he relates to. So this is an album that I'll be able to listen to for the rest of my life. I just listened to it yesterday on a Sunday. It seems to always be a Sunday when I want to listen to this album. Again, I don't go to church, but when I feel that, I need a little spiritual lift on a Sunday. I need to be in a state of mind to really feel grateful for what I have and understand my place in the world. This is an album that I go to, and it never disappoints me. It has so much to give, and I cannot recommend it enough, or any of Quelle Chris's catalog enough. I'll have more videos from Quelle Chris that I will be talking about. He's absolutely one of the best hip-hop artists out there. When you talk about producer MCs and that lineage of guys like Q-Tip and Large Professor, he is right in that type of lineage. Lord Finesse, these older guys, he carries that on. And he produces lots of albums when it doesn't even rhyme on that are out there. So you're always going to find stuff from Quelle Chris that's worth digging into. Amazing visual artist as well. Makes his own video games and digital art. Just a phenomenal artist, a phenomenal guy. Get tapped into Quelle Chris's music and enjoy it for the rest of your life, because that's, I think, for his fans, it's a lifelong thing. You don't go in or out of Quelle Chris. He's a guy that's there forever. So that's my video for today. Quelle Chris, Innocent Country 2. Make sure you're tapped into Quelle Chris. Make sure you're tapped into this album. Till next video, peace out, Uncle Benji.